Good afternoon. I want to spend the last couple minutes of this session talking about one particular candidate, Hillary Clinton. Let me repeat that, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, because you know, there's been a lot of talk in the national media about other candidates. We need to remind the American people, as bad as things are with this president, they'd be much worse if there was a president, Hillary Clinton. We can't let that happen. I mean, think about it. This is Hillary Clinton recently said that those Planned Parenthood videos were disturbing, and yet she still says she stands with Planned Parenthood. I'm proud to say in my state, a blue state, as Eric mentioned, we defunded Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before the videos, because we knew how disturbing that was. Hillary Clinton earlier this year went after me and other governors who signed into law voter ID requirements to show a photo ID. She's out of touch with the vast majority of everyday Americans, not just Republicans or conservatives, but Americans who understand that you should have a law that says it's easy to vote but hard to cheat, and that's why we have a photo ID requirement. Hillary Clinton is going to claim that she's got the upper hand when it comes to foreign policy. But think about that. Hillary Clinton, think about that. Everywhere in the world that Hillary Clinton has touched is more messed up today than before she and the president took office. Hillary Clinton should not be our commander-in-chief. And it's not just about her leadership or lack thereof at the State Department. Think about those emails she was doing while she was Secretary of State. You know, the emails where she claimed they didn't have classified information in them, and yet there was. The American people can't trust Hillary Clinton. As I said the other night, sadly, it's likely that the government in Russia and China knows more about Hillary Clinton email server than do the members of the United States Congress, and that has put our security at risk. Hillary Clinton could be the deceiver-in-chief, but we cannot trust her to be the commander-in-chief. And there's plenty more things, and I'll touch on it in a minute, but think about it then. So the question is not just who we nominate for president as the Republican side, but who's best equipped to make sure that Hillary Clinton is not the next president. And I would argue to you, there's a lot of great people. You saw many of them the other night, first on one part of this, or one stage earlier in the night, and then the others joined with me, 9 others, and there are a great group of Republicans. Some of the best we've had since 1980. In fact, you saw the other night, I'm from the Midwest, I'm Midwestern night, I didn't spend my time talking about the other Republicans. You see, they're not our opponent, Hillary Clinton is. And sometimes people confuse that. But I want to tell you why I'm the best candidate to take on Hillary Clinton, because I realize there are people from all across this area, and so I'm going to make the risk of referencing a Homer reference for me. You see, my favorite football player is a guy who plays football in my state. He was last year the NFL's MVP, Aaron Rodgers. You see, Aaron Rodgers doesn't talk trash. He lets himself show his work on the field. Not by how he trash talks others. He shows what he does on the field to play. And I would argue to you that I'm the best candidate to take on Hillary Clinton, because I don't just talk about it. I fight and I win, and I have a record of accomplishments in a blue state, and I did not compromise my principles to get it done, unlike anybody else out there. All good people, but there are fighters who've yet to win those fights. There are winners who've yet to be in the fight. I'm the only one who has fought and won and actually gotten things done in a blue state, and we did it without compromising our principles. That's the kind of leader we need. That's the kind of common sense, conservative, reform-minded leadership not just our party needs, but our country needs going forward. You see, if we're going to take on a name from the past, we need a name from the future. We need a new, fresh face. If we're going to take on somebody who embodies Washington, we need someone who's not only not from Washington, someone who's taken on the big government special interests from Washington. And if we're going to take on someone who doesn't have accomplishments, we need someone who's got a full list of accomplishments, particularly in a state that hasn't gone Republican for president since 1984. So let me spend a couple more minutes, though, telling you about where we need to go and where I'd like to take this country. Talk about a vision for 2020, where we'd be 4 years into a Walker presidency. And it's simple. It's about three simple ideas: reform, growth, and safety. Reform is about taking power from Washington and putting it into the hands of the hardworking taxpayers in states all across this great country. Growth is about helping people, not the government, helping people create a better economy so that everyone can live their piece of the American dream. And safety is about protecting your children and your grandchildren from radical Islamic terrorism and all of the threats in this world. When we talk about reform, for me, it's about not just saying you're going to take power out, but taking power and money when it comes to everything from Medicaid to transportation to infrastructure to environmental protection, yes, even education, money, and power out of Washington and sending it back to our states. And in the cases of our education system, sending it right back to our schools. Because I don't believe in Common Core or statewide or a nationwide school board. Send the money and power back to the people at the local level. Hillary Clinton believes, I think she believes, that you measure success in government by how many people are dependent in the government. We as Americans, not just as conservatives, we as Americans should measure success by just the opposite, by how many people are no longer dependent on the government. Because we understand that true freedom and prosperity, they don't come from the mighty hand of the government. They come from empowering people to live their own lives and control their own destinies through the dignity that's born of work. I think about my first job. I washed dishes at the Countryside restaurant. And then I moved up to the big times. I started flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. Like a lot of you don't know this, but Paul Ryan, my friend, grew up in Janesville. I was about 20 miles down the road in Delavan. We both flipped burgers at McDonald's. The only difference is Paul's manager told him he had to flip hamburgers in the back because he didn't have the interpersonal skills to work the front cash register. It's true. But I think about growing up in that small town. My dad was a small town preacher. My mom was a part-time secretary. My grandparents were farmers who didn't have indoor plumbing until my mother went off to junior high school. My dad's dad, my grandpa Walker, was a machinist for 42 years at Barbara Coleman. I look back on life for my brother and me and realize we didn't inherit fame or fortune from our families. What we got was the belief that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can do and be anything you want. That is the American dream, and that is a dream worth fighting for in America yet today. But if more people are going to live that dream, we've got to have an economy that works for every American. And it's not working under this president. It certainly wouldn't work under Hillary Clinton. You see, Hillary Clinton thinks you grow the economy in Washington. Last year alone, 6 of the top 10 wealthiest counties in America, you know where they were? In and around Washington, D.C. For the rest of us in America, we understand that people create jobs, not the government. And we need to help people in cities and towns and villages all across this country live their piece of the American dream. And you do that in 5 simple ways. First off, you start by repealing Obamacare once and for all and put patients and families back in charge of their health care decisions. And I mean right away. I'd send a bill up on the very first day as president, just like I authorized our state to join the Obamacare lawsuit on the very first day. A lot of people talk about it. We've actually done it in my state, and we'll do it for America if you give us that chance. Secondly, we need to rein in the out-of-control federal regulations that are like a wet blanket on the nation's economy. You saw it the other day with the EPA. It cost my state alone something like 20,000 manufacturing jobs with what I call the costly power plan. We need to rein that in so that we can move the economy going forward for small businesses and farmers and ranchers and others out there. Third, we need to have an all-of-the-above energy policy that takes advantage of the abundance of what God has given us here on this country and on this continent. We are an energy-rich country. We need to start acting like it. Fourth, we need to help people get the education and skills that they need to succeed in careers that pay far more than the minimum wage. Let Hillary Clinton talk about how low wages are going to be. We're going to talk about how we lift everyone up with the education and skills that they need to succeed. I'm proud of what we did to reform public education in my state. We now have the second best ACT scores in the country. Why? Because we took power out of the hands of the big government special interests, the big government union bosses, and put it firmly in the hands of the hardworking taxpayers and the people they elect to run their schools. We got rid of seniority and tenure. We can hire and fire based on merit. We can pay based on performance. We can put the best and the brightest in our schools. We need to be able to do that all across America. And we gave more families quality choices. You know why? Because I trust parents to make the right decision for their children. And finally, in addition to those other four things, the last thing for a pro-growth plan going forward is we need to not only reform the tax code, but lower the tax burden, both on individuals and on employers, so that we can be competitive again in the world and bring more of those jobs back from overseas to put more of our fellow Americans back to work. Now, sometimes people joke about why I make such a focus on lowering taxes. You can see in my state, I'm proud to say, we cut taxes by $2 billion. We cut them on individual rates. We cut them on employers. We cut them on property. In fact, property taxes are lower today than they were 4 years ago. So I'm proud of what we did with tax relief. But sometimes some of the liberals say, well, why does the governor focus so much attention on tax relief? Well, I tell people all the time, it's simple to explain. You see, my wife, Tonette, and I like to go to a store called Kohl's department store. And at that store, like a lot of great retailers, just about everything's on sale. So I've learned over the years, if you're going to go to the rack to buy a shirt that says it was $29.99, you now go to the one that says it was $19.99. And then we go out and we take the insert, you know, a little scratch-off thing from the Sunday newspaper, and we take that up to the cash register. Or maybe if I remember to stop at home, we get the coupon that's mailed to us that gives us 15 or 20, or if we're really lucky, 30% off, right? And then as the cash register, we go up there to the clerk, and she's ringing up the bill. My wife swoops into her purse, and she pulls out some of that Kohl's cash, right? And next thing you know, they're paying me to buy that shirt, right? Well, it feels like it. Actually, I think I got this tie on sale at Kohl's as well, so Tonette got it the other day. But I'm thinking about that, and I said, well, it feels like it. So how does a company like Kohl's make money? They make it off of volume, right? You see, they could sell shirts at that higher price, and they might sell a few, or they could lower the price, broaden the base, and make more money off of volume. That's how I think about your money, the taxpayers' money. You see, we could have a government that taxed you at a higher rate, and a few of you could afford it. Or we can lower the rate, broaden the base, and increase the volume of people participating in the economy. Years ago, that worked pretty well under a guy by the name of President Ronald Reagan. Back then, we called it the Laffer curve. Today, I call it the Kohl's curve, because I think you can spend your money far better than the federal government. And the third point is about safety, because you see, to prosper, we need to live in a safe and stable world, right? To me, that's probably one of the most important responsibilities of the commander-in-chief, is to ensure that the American people are safe and sound. In my lifetime, the best president when it comes to national security and foreign policy was a governor from California. Under President Reagan's leadership, we rebuilt the military. We stood up for our allies, we stood up against our enemies, and we stood for strong American values, and that led to one of the most peaceful times in modern American history. We did it before, we can do it again going forward. But think about it. Things are headed in the opposite direction. You know, sadly today, under the Obama-Clinton doctrine, America's leading from behind. And that has us headed towards a disaster. We've got a president who drew a line in the sand and allowed it to be crossed. A president who called ISIS the JV squad, Yemen a success story, and Iran, a place we can do business with. I don't know about all of you, but I still remember my brother and I tying ribbons around the tree in front of our house during the 444 days that Iran held 52 Americans hostage. Iran is not a place we should be doing business with. If I am your president, I will terminate the deal with Iran on the very first day in office, reinstate the sanctions, put in place even more crippling sanctions, and convince our allies to do the same. Iran is not a place we should be doing business with. And we've got a president earlier this year who proclaimed that the greatest threat to future generations was climate change. Well, Mr. President, I respectfully disagree. The greatest threat to future generations is radical Islamic terrorism, and we need to do something about it. We need to lift the political restrictions on our military personnel in Iraq so they can work with our Kurd and Sunni allies to reclaim the territory taken by ISIS. We need to make sure we stand up against Russia as they go into sovereign nations. You see, Putin believes in the old Lenin principle that you probe with bayonets. If you find mush, you push. If you find steel, you stop. Under Obama and Clinton, Putin has found far too many years of mush. America needs a foreign policy that puts steel in front of our enemies. We need to stop the cyber attacks from China, slow their advances in international waters, and once and for all, speak out about their abysmal human rights record. No more of this Asian pivot like Secretary Clinton said. We need to speak out about the wrongs that are happening in China. We need to secure our border, enforce our laws, no amnesty, and go forward with a system, a legal immigration system that gives priority to American working families and their wages. And we need to honor our men and women in uniform by giving them the resources that they need to keep us safe and the protection they need to keep themselves safe here on American soil. And then we need to give them the quality and timely health care that they deserve when they return home. We need to honor our veterans. It is a disgrace with the VA today. We need to honor our veterans. But the best way to honor them is by fighting to win. You see, this is important because there will be times, our goal, as it was under Reagan with Peace Through Strength, our goal should be peace. But there will be times when America must fight. And if we must, Americans fight to win. You see, the rest of the world must know that there is no greater friend and no worse enemy than the United States of America. And so there are some pretty big challenges out there for the next president. With our finances, with the size and scope of our federal government, with our economy not heading in the right direction, or at least as fast as it should be going, and where we stand in the world today. But you know what? I'm an optimist. You see, I ran for governor many years ago in a state that hadn't gone Republican for president since 1984, because after a lot of thought and a lot of talk and a lot of prayer, Tonette and I decided that we wanted our sons to live in a state that was better than the one we grew up in. And I'm glad that's the reason I ran for governor, because when all those protesters came in, and my apologies, the Occupy movement didn't start in Washington. Didn't start in Wall Street. It started on my street. It started in my capital. And I'm glad that Matt and Alex and their generation were the reason I ran in the first place, because you see, if it had just been about a title or position, I might have walked away. I might have said, this is forget it. This is nuts. But because it was about Matt and Alex and all the other sons and daughters like them, I said, I got to do this for them. And it was worth all the protests. It was worth all the death threats. It was worth all the nonsense and the recall, being targeted again last year in the re-election. Because today I'm proud to tell you that even in a blue state like Wisconsin, my sons and others in their generation are growing up in a state because of our reforms that is better than the state that I grew up in. When I look at this country today, though, I have some of the same concerns for Matt and for Alex and for all the others in their generation. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that with the right leadership that understands that government is there to serve the people and not the other way around, leadership that understands that we need to take power out of Washington and send it to the states, leadership that understands that people create jobs, not the government, and understands that the best place for America in the world is to lead again. Not to be involved as the world's policeman, not to be involved in every spot, not to nation build, but rather to lead when it comes to our national security and our interests and those of our allies like Israel. We need to lead again. We are a great country. We just need to start acting like it again. And I believe we're packed into this hall today like we've been packed into so many other halls across the country. I believe the reason why there are 17 quality Republicans running for president is because we're optimists. We believe that there's someone out there, someone on those stages who can stand up and provide that leadership. I would ask for your vote today and your support because I believe it's more than just putting a Republican in office. We need a reformer, someone who will fight and win and get results without compromising our common sense, conservative principles going forward. If you elect me as your president, I will fight and win for you and every other American in your family every single day I'm in office. Thank you for coming out. God bless you, and let's take some questions.
So, Governor, instead of asking you the first question, I'm going to toss it to Brandon at the Ace of Spades decision desk. He wants to know what candidates like you will do to win in places like Pennsylvania that have trended away from the Republicans.
Well, the good news is with any of my answers I give, I don't just get to talk in theory, I can talk in practice. I was just in Pennsylvania the other day. I was even in Philly. I actually had 2 cheesesteaks, not one. One Geno's at Pat's, so I'm doing my best to eat my way around America, which is why I need a Fitbit to make sure I don't look like I've eaten my way around America. Exactly. But we're going to go to places where people don't go, which is why we were in Philly, we were in York, we've been in Pittsburgh. We're going to make a play for the Commonwealth, not just in the primary, which happens later in the process, although I think when you look at the size and the quality of this field, the process may last until late April and May, if not to the convention. That's a good thing. That's a good thing as long as we're talking about issues. Not nonsense, not hysteria. As long as we're talking about issues and what we have to offer that's better than what people like Hillary Clinton's going to offer, we're going to be fine. And I believe Pennsylvania can be one. I mean, think about it. Even though the governor, who's a friend of mine, the former governor, lost, Republicans in the legislature in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania actually added seats. It's why I've been there multiple times already this year. I think the upper industrial Midwest, where I live, is going to be key to electing the next president. And so I think we can win in states like Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, as well as others across the country. And we're going to make a play for each and every one of those states. I've carried areas of my state that are heavy blue-collar manufacturing areas. Why? Because people saw results. They saw that we stood up and fought for them. We froze tuition on all of our university campuses so that working families could afford to pay for their kids' college education. We cut property taxes for working families. We cut income taxes for working families. We made it easier for employers to put more working families to work. If we did it in a state like Wisconsin, there's no doubt it's not too late for America.
Dr. Faulner from Penfield, Illinois asks, why should middle-class voters vote for you with trade deficits causing the loss of so many jobs? How would you reverse the trend?
On trade deficits, I think for starters, we should actually have free and open trade like we did under President Reagan, but we should have it on a level playing field. If we have a level playing field, American workers can compete with anybody in the world. Unfortunately, under this president, not just when it comes to trade, when it comes to Cuba, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to other areas, this guy's not a very good negotiator. In fact, sadly, I've said about the Iran deal, I'd love to play cards with this guy because this guy folds on just about everything. As president, we would put in place aggressive measures to make sure that we had truly free trade going forward. So again, Americans can compete on a level playing field. We can out-innovate and outwork anybody in the world if given the chance on a level playing field, and we need to. Because right now, more than 90% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the borders of the United States. And so we can't ignore the rest of the world, but we need to make sure we've got a leader in the White House who understands that and is going to fight for trade policies that level the playing field so that American workers can compete with anybody else.
Reed from Atlanta, Georgia writes, as you know, the mainstream media enjoys pointing out the fact that you did not graduate from college, and they try to make an issue out of it. What's your response to the media?
It's simple. My senior year of college, I got a job offer from the American Red Cross. A lot of my friends who were a year or two older had degrees and no job. I had a job offer and no degree. I'm pretty smart. I took the job.
That's an excellent answer.
Now, I would add to that, like any of you who are going to hire someone to run your company, I hope people would look at the job I've done in the last few years. Because it's not just about where you went to college that matters, it's about the job you're doing right now and the job you're applying to. And I think I've done a pretty good job of turning a messed up state around and putting it on the right path.
Dave wants to know, do you think that you can do nationally what you did in Wisconsin when it comes to union opposition to your governance?
Yes.
Excellent, good answer.
I'll add, I guess, but yes, and I'll tell you why. Because what we did wasn't just about unions. It was about power. You see, the unions represented the big government special interest. And what we did was take power out of their hands and put it into the hands of the hardworking taxpayers. What we need to do now more than ever, and it's why I think we're unique in this. Again, a lot of great Republicans, but there are a lot of fighters, there are a lot of winners. There's nobody else who's gone through what we've done to take power out of the hands of the big government special interests, which Lord knows we have in Washington. And the problem in this world with this economy is not Wall Street, it's K Street, where too many of the lobbyists are sitting. We need to take power out of the hands of the elite in Washington, including some Republicans, and take it and send it back to the states and local governments and the people. I've shown more than anybody in this race that's exactly what I can do and will do going forward.
Several people have the same question, including Jerry from Black Mountain, North Carolina. What are the 3 agencies, when you get into the White House, that you wouldn't wait for congressional action to begin reforming?
Well, you know, I was talking actually with somebody here earlier, not only agencies, but think about Obamacare. Not only would I send up legislation, draft legislation right off the bat to repeal Obamacare in the first day, I believe we're going to verify. I was talking with someone earlier, it's a great point, saying it was executive action that took out the Congress from the conditions of Obamacare. Why not start off right off the bat saying, as an added incentive to get Congress to eliminate, to vote to repeal Obamacare once and for all, why not remove the exemption to Obamacare for the members of the Congress and their staff? That would be a pretty good condition going forward. So that's just with Obamacare overall, but I look at the EPA as a good example. There are 50 states that have equivalents of the EPA. Mine's called the Department of Natural Resources. To me, long term, I'd love to take all that power and money and send it back to the states where people who actually live in those states have to live with the way they interpret those laws. But in the beginning, part of the reason why I'm in court right now with my Attorney General trying to sue the Obama administration over what I call the costly power plan, which is the rule they just put out, is because they've overstepped their bounds. And so I think you can take on the EPA in that regard. You can take on other regulations. I certainly would pull back on I would eliminate the executive action the president took on illegal immigration. Another example where the Congress didn't do it, but I and 24 other governors stood up in court and got them to at least block it. As president, I would take that out right away. Thanks, everybody. God bless you.
Governor Scott Walker.